Hi everyone and welcome to our season ender. This is the season ender of season 5. This is episode 66. So very quick intro lang. We started Quarantalk way back during April kasi bakit nga ba, Eah?
Hindi tayo makatulog dahil sa anxiety siguro. Pero other than that, syempre, dahil hindi tayo makatulog, we also want to discuss and provide a platform where we can discuss public concerns amid the pandemic. And we are now on season 5. At yes, thank you for joining us on Quarantalk.
Okay, Eah, let's do this. Sino ba ang ating makakapanayam ngayong gabi?
Alright, so ngayon nga, pag-uusapan natin ang press freedom. And kasama po natin ang Time Magazine Person of the Year 2018, founder and CEO of Rappler, veteran journalist Maria Ressa.
Hi, Miss Maria. Good evening to you.
Good evening. Hi, guys.
Okay, thank you so much for gracing our show tonight. And of course, press freedom nga po yung pag-uusapan natin. Okay, so our first question for you, Miss Maria. Since for the past years, itong hashtag Hold the Line, yan po yung pinaka parang battle cry natin for press freedom. But my question is, how can we ensure that this message will transcend to the masses? Paano po nila mauunawaan na bakit nga ba kailangan protektahan ang press freedom dito sa ating bansa?
It's a tough question to ask me, right? I mean, Jules, in the sense that when I was with ABS-CBN, the goal was to reach a mass audience. And then what we did with Rappler was to essentially we did what I wanted to do, which is to make people think, think. So press freedom is really the foundation of every single right in the Constitution. If you don't have press freedom, then that means you can throw away our Constitution. I was going to try to speak in Tagalog, but there's no way I will do this. So let me just diba? I said this when I got convicted on June 15th. When press freedom dies, your rights die. That means your right to ask questions, your right to ask for accurate information, and that can start with how many people have died in the drug war, have been killed in the drug war, to how many people have died from COVID-19, to how many people were affected by the last 3 typhoons, right? So again, I guess it goes to this: without press freedom, you cannot have facts. If you don't have facts, you don't have truth. If you don't have truth, you don't have trust. How can we do anything meaningful without that?
Right. And today po, the media is like on a volatile environment, if I would say. And it's very easy to be tagged as, very leaning or biased towards one political group. But then there's that age-old debate on objectivity. What does objectivity even mean? So now, how do we make the public understand the kind of media that the public deserves or that the country deserves?
It's such a tough question to answer because we're using old ideas to define a new time, right? The reality is that we're on social media, right? And the people who your show was recommended to, as a recommendation, the algorithm, right? It feeds it to people who are already like you. The discovery is the way the social media platforms grow is friends of friends. So your friends will get recommendations that are similar to what you have. But that idea of growth through friends of friends actually means that we will separate and polarize societies. Right? And why do I say that? You go back and look at like 2016, before, when we all agreed on the facts, and then all of a sudden, after President Duterte won, because he was a polarizing presence and because there was a very strong propaganda machine on Facebook, on social media, if you are pro-Duterte, you will move further right? So we all started in the middle, but now you're going to move here because you're going to grow your own social media network. And then if you're anti-Duterte, you're going to move further here. And the more distance that exists between these sides, the greater the room for alternative facts, the greater the room for illusion, the greater the room for the destruction of democracy. Right? And I think that's why when you ask me questions like that, I think the first step is to acknowledge that the technology has fundamentally changed everything. Even the idea of bias. You are now being manipulated with a bias, right? If you are, for example, well, let me now go to the kind of racial, the kinds of things that are coded. There's actually a film called Coded Bias. But right now, the platform that we are on is biased against facts and biased against journalism. That is what the data shows us. Social media has become a behavior modification system. Right? Well, and that means that we pump in all of our data. Machine learning builds a model of each of us, knows us better than we know ourselves, and then artificial intelligence takes it and sells your weakest moment to a message, whether that is to a company or a country, propaganda, advertising and propaganda in the new world, right? So every time, then when you're fed that message, the ad or the message, if you click it, that's more data. If you don't click it, that's also data. So this is an always on. The phone that you use gathers data. Every app gathers data. And then the algorithms come back to manipulate you. So let me go to your question. Objectivity doesn't exist. It never really did, because you are who you are, right? And all you do as a journalist is to try to provide context, to provide a more comprehensive perspective than just a one view, which is what a propagandist does.
Okay. Okay, Miss Maria, since we're talking about the internet, okay, there's this 1996 study from MIT, and the study basically predicted that in the future, the internet will be producing echo chambers. So obviously, we have so many echo chambers right now online. So what's the role of media right now to basically ensure that despite the presence of these echo chambers, sila pa rin yung vanguards ng truth? Kasi lately, di ba, parang ang dami ng versions ng katotohanan eh. So, paano papasok yung media sa mga echo chambers na to, considering that some media outfits right now nagagamit na rin as propaganda?
I think it's being on the right side of history in this, right? I think globally, we're seeing this erosion of facts. We're seeing propaganda being seeded as narratives. Let me answer your question directly. Jules, it takes courage to do what a journalist does, right? You have shown, Eah, you've seen the standards and ethics of journalism, right? And if you stick to that, by and large, globally, the journalists have done their jobs. We keep speaking truth to power. We keep doing the stories, regardless of how power reacts. Because in the best of times, even when power says, you know, we are the fourth estate, they still don't like it when you criticize with evidence, this kind of evidence-based thinking. In the past, the governments realized that absolute power corrupts absolutely, and our constitution, like the US Constitution, builds in checks and balances. That was the role of the journalists, of news organizations. And during those times, news organizations developed a standards and ethics manual, values. That's how we respond to it. That was how trust was created. But now you have to throw all of that away. This is weird. Up until I'd say 2015, news organizations were the gatekeepers to the public sphere. But then technology took over, right? So we lost our gatekeeping powers, which is huge. That determines fact from fiction. If we publish something that is a lie, we can get sued. We are accountable. The news organization stakes its life on it, right? Both credibility and financially. But after the tech platforms took over, social media platforms, they became the gatekeepers, but they abdicated responsibility. So how do we deal with this? Well, the problem is that the data that flows through the social media platforms, there is no fact and fiction. Everything is equal. A fact is equal to a lie. And in fact, a lie laced with anger and hate spreads faster and further than a really boring fact. That's an MIT study that was done in 2018. Science magazine pointed it out. Lies spread 6 to 7 times faster. Hate spreads faster. We see this on social media. The Philippines, for the 5th year in a row, we spend the most time on social media globally. And we've become the petri dish. I'll go back to your question. I'm sorry I'm taking so long to respond, right? But what we have to do is first stop the virus of lies. So as we're fighting a pandemic, the lies that are being seeded on social media, and we know this, we've shown you the data, red tagging begins with lies, right? So we need to stop the lies first. So that means technology needs to be held accountable. The people who are trying to manipulate us should be held accountable. The second is journalists have to keep doing our jobs, because that's where facts are going to come from. And you need facts to have a working democracy. You need facts for rescue in a typhoon in a country that has an average of 20 typhoons every year. How can we not have systems for facts in disaster risk reduction and management? So we just keep doing our jobs. We just have to survive this very, very difficult time period. We're holding the line, and we'll hopefully the lies will stop. The distribution platform will. I always ask Silicon Valley to have enlightened self-interest, because they don't want to kill democracy. Or maybe they do. I don't know anymore, right? It's been 4 years. But then, so then you need the facts for whom? For civil society. And that's the third leg. These are the 3 legs of Rappler: tech, journalism, community. You need the facts to build communities of action. That always was our mission. We build communities of action, but it has become so difficult in the age of social media. And that's part of the reason it's time for regulation.
Mhm. All right. Thank you so much, Maria, for answering our Miss Universe questions. For
Sorry,
you.
Sandali lang. Tama na.
No, pero yun guys, I'm grateful po that you provided actionable steps, stopping the virus and holding people and even the technology and the owners of this big tech accountable to this. Now at this point po, we would like to call in some of the hosts, well, all hosts here on Quarantalk Media. We have shows every day, and they would like to meet you also and ask you more questions. So we'll have with us first, hosting our show dedicated to the rural development sector, titled The Main Agenda, we have Germaine De Ruña. Germaine, are you here?
She'll enter in a few, but of course, you also have another show, environment show, hosted by Kuya Rodne Galicha live from Sibuyan Islands. I hope okay yung signal niya ngayon. Medyo okay, he'll be there in a few. And we also have another host for our history show, Throwback Kasaysayan, hosted by history professor from UP, my brother, Professor Jio Guiang. Hello. Hi, Jio.
Hey.
Hi.
Right.
Hi. Good evening.
Also with us is the power tandem of the very fun Thursday Inuman session with Thysz Estrada and Raffy Magno.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, Maria.
Hello, Maria.
Oh my gosh, it's like a panel. Okay, so every host po will have one question each for you. So let's proceed. Maybe we can start with Kuya Rodne if you're
Hi, Maria.
Hi, Rodney. How are you? Nawala.
I think it's signal niya po talaga. Pero he's on here.
Parang I've met all of you in different
Yes.
lives.
Yeah,
Yes.
Interesting. It's good to speak with you.
Hi, Maria. Long time no see. Well, I have a question for you.
Uh-oh. Sige,
Well,
go.
yeah, thank you. We only see each other in the airport sometimes and in Rappler. Well, I have only one question for you, Maria. The government is now proposing a super department. The government is now proposing a super department called Department of Disaster Resilience, which will actually hold a lot of foreign, uh, funding, many funding for disaster resilience in quotation mark. And they actually plan also to absorb a lot of agencies from DNR, like MGB, from the OIC, like Pag-asa and FIVOLX, etc. This is a super duper department with the super duper huge funding. And of course, being the flagship issue, yung resilience. How can you say, what is your view on this with a super duper huge Department of Disaster Resilience?
Let me phrase it this way, right? We already have weak institutions, and creating task forces like gremlins, and then creating a super duper group, um, seems to me not to lack understanding of the way institutions work, the way workflow processes should work, how difficult it is to create workflows and effectively have bureaucracies that work, that get from here to here, right? And a case in point is NDRRMC. We watched it formed, we watched it stumble, we watched it grow, and then we watched it succeed, and then we watched it dismantled, essentially. Uh, I think for as long as I've been a journalist, and by next year it'll be 35 years, one of the biggest things I've dreamt of and longed for is our strong institutions, not personality driven action points. And at this point in time, we're reduced to task forces and new bodies that show me a lack of understanding of governance, of effective governance, and a lack of understanding of how important strong institutions are and how they are built on years of study to understand how things can work. Um, so I haven't given up, because we can't. But I do hope that we get more details, that this is vetted. That hasn't happened in the last 4 years. But let me put it this way. There are a lot of super duper things right now, super duper bodies, super duper task forces that have tremendous power and a lot of money. There will come a time, and this is the task not just of journalists, but of citizens, where we will demand accountability, and we already are. So I hope that whatever is formed has results attached to it. I think that's what we'll be looking for.
All right. Thank you, Kuya Rodney, for your question. Our next host to ask you, Maria, is my brother, Jio Guiang, for his history show, Throwback Kasaysayan. Gio, go ahead.
Hi, good afternoon, Maria. How are you?
Good.
Okay. We frequently feature the topic of this question in our show, but we would like to get your insights. There is obviously a deliberate attempt of the Marcos clan to revise history in their favor. And unfortunately, the Duterte administration has been constantly enabling this negative form of historical revisionism in our country. So the question would be, how does the media work to provide the public what is factual about the past? How do they work with different agencies in government, for example, where there are experts in history employed, or how do they work? How does the media like Rappler, for example, work with universities and colleges in order to probably repel this negative form of historical revisionism?
I think so. It's such a complex question. We know what the facts are. the facts are there. And again, I will throw it right back to what is the problem and why has historical revisionism succeeded, right? It succeeded again because of where you get your information from. Regardless, I know, Gio, you're a professor, right? But our schools have become secondary to social media. And the reality is, if you can look at this in the same way, look at what's happening in the US right now, right? These false narratives are seeded. And in the case of Bongbong Marcos, a lot of it was done on YouTube. YouTube has a 98% penetration rate in the Philippines. And I'll do parallel Marcos Trump conspiracy theories, right? What happened? Seed on YouTube, and then it's spread and shared on closed Facebook groups, and then it emerges. When it emerges as a narrative story, it comes from top down. It comes from a government official, and then it explodes because it has already changed the way people think. This is called an influence operation. So this is why I don't think history, I don't think teachers, I don't think journalists stand a chance until we can stop this type of influence operation. Let me make that just clear, right? In 2015, Bongbong Marcos began the real, like, ramped up influence operations. It's a revisionism culture, and it's a lot of content on social media. It has taken root from 2015 to 2020. A lot of real people, Filipinos, believe, doubt. They now doubt what the facts are. And it didn't help that our history books, that our educational system, that our court system, it didn't help that this was not cemented in stone, right? Not like South Africa did, for example. It doesn't help that there was. It's funny. It's like it's happening in plain sight, right? But we've seen this not just with the Marcoses. Take a look at the color yellow. You've seen this evolve right directly in plain sight from something good to something evil. That is the power of the platforms that are getting information to Filipinos. I sidestepped that, but let me go back to the old days. The old days before social media. How did journalists do it? We went to history professors like you. We went to people who spent their lives studying points of pivotal moments in history, right? There are films that have been made about this, documentaries that have been made. All of those things are thinking slow processes. You know, the book by Daniel Kahneman, he won a Nobel Prize, Thinking Fast, Thinking Slow. The processes that you talked about, journalism, history, teaching, education, these are thinking slow processes. They don't stand a chance against thinking fast, social media, thinking fast, insidious manipulation. I sound so bad. No, I'll shut up and I just think that we have our work cut out for us. And you know, the fact that you were doing your work, yes, you have your students in class and they are reading books, but they are also on social media and they're being insidiously manipulated, and no human being has defenses to the kinds of strategies of neuroscience that have been used to manipulate us.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Thank you for answering.
Thank you so much. And now let's move on po to Raffy Magno. Raffy.
Hi, Maria.
Hello, Raffy. How are you?
I'm very tired.
I'm sure. But good work.
Yeah, long time no see, Maria. You've been sharing about so many courageous acts, both in fighting for truth, fighting for the space of journalists in the Philippines nowadays. Are you not afraid, Maria? Hindi ka ba natatakot?
I think, you know, I've thought about this a long time, in the sense that when the Duterte administration began to attack me, I'm old. Like I could be all your parents. Not all, but I'm old. I've been around a long time, and I helped write the standards and ethics manuals of at least 3 news organizations. And I guess when the government began to attack me, there was no other way I could react. And then when they kept coming, I just then got so much more evidence of the abuse of power, right? So when do I get scared? I always say this, you have to embrace your fear. Because you can't embrace your fear is almost zen-like. You have to imagine the worst thing you can think of, like whatever you're most afraid of. And then you touch it, you hold it, and then you embrace it and like fill it so that you can rob it of its sting. Because I can't do my job or I can't do anything if I let my fear take over, diba? And so that's it's something I learned when I was really young. My family moved to the US when I was 10 years old, and I was the shortest only brown kid in a class in a public school that I walked into. I was like 4'2", and everyone else was 5'2". And I just couldn't be paralyzed by fear. You have to embrace your fear so that you keep going, and that it's a good lesson now. Whatever the Duterte administration throws at Rappler, we know we're on the right side of history. And standards and ethics, it's very clear. It's about values, isn't it? If you're clear on your values, then I always say, you hold the line. Well, that line is you hold the line because on this side you're evil and this side you're good. You have to stay good. I didn't answer your question.
No, it's okay.
It's kind of like, it's like being sick, right? Some days you wake up and you feel fantastic. And then other days you wake up and you have a cough and you don't feel so good.
Yeah.
I think it's like that, right? And then each day you just keep going and doing what you need to do. I think more than at any other time, and you know this about me, it's like, we have a task. The mission becomes even more important, especially since we're fighting the impunity of not just the Duterte administration, but Facebook, right? Those are 2 huge things, and we gotta fix it. You have to fix it. Otherwise, it's your generation that bears the brunt of our mistakes.
Yeah, and siguro ako follow up, Maria. No, it's okay. Para ako nagre-retreat sa mga sharing ni Maria. Yung pagpapatuloy every day. Ako if very very quickly lang. When I was mobbed by the trolls, when Mocha Uson initiated a post, diba? On me. Parang na-paralyze ako eh. I felt so paralyzed. I'm away. I was in a fellowship abroad. I felt so paralyzed.
I remember this.
I felt so tired and scared. And then all of a sudden, parang it pushed me to ask the question, worth it ba to? Diba? Is this worth it? But of course, syempre, you know my answer to that, Maria. But I would like to mirror it back to you. Is this really worth it, Maria?
Oh my gosh, this is I think the biggest battle of our lives, isn't it? Of course it's worth it. Look, so you reminded me again of all of the attacks. These attacks, by the way, on social media are meant to do 2 things, right? It's meant to make you feel like that. It's meant to take your voice out because of yourself, right? They pound you to silence. But the other part is it's meant to tear you down, tear your credibility down. You can't let that happen, right? And yes, of course it's worth it, because it's not just the attack, it's the way it happens, it's the manner it happens, it's the fact that this is about power, right? I guess let me put it into a personal way. I've been a journalist now, like I said, by next year it'll be 35 years. And I feel like that entire time, whether I'm in Pakistan or India or Kashmir or Indonesia or Mindanao, everything that I've learned brought me here to this point. Because and I don't think I can. I wish I could just kind of go away and shut everything down, but I don't think I can, because then I wouldn't be me. And maybe that entire 30 some odd years, the whole point of that is it's like going to the gym. The whole point of that is to get me to this point where I can fight back, where I can say, look, you're abusing your power. You can't do that. And no matter how you try to intimidate a journalist, journalists will not take it. I guess that's gosh, Raffy. I mean, you keep doing what you do, diba? But of course, I don't think we have any choice.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we wouldn't be who we are.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Raffy.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much, Raffy, for your question. Our next question will be coming from Thysz Estrada. Thysz, go ahead.
Hi, Maria. This is Thysz. Nice to see you. I only see you in Rappler events and and Twitter, of course, and Twitter. So I promised I'm not going to start yet with the question, but I promised my followers this since last night. No, we are so concerned with red tagging, but local queer Twitter was abuzz yesterday because one troll tagged the most popular local Twitter queer Twitter users as kanal. I don't know if you're familiar with the kanal term, no? To mean the kanal, of course, it's the gutter. To mean loud and tactless. Those who are very popular and speak out against the government. Now, to answer the troll, they're taking this back and reclaiming the word kanal to mean that it's standing for being outspoken on politics and social issues and holding the government accountable. So there's this movement where there's the most popular and funniest Twitter handles out there are being attacked for being outspoken, but they're reclaiming that and claiming the word kanal to mean, hey, we're the ones who are outspoken and making sure that we use our influence in a positive way. They're the biggest, I think, answers to how effective trolls are because of their huge followings. But here's my question. I just promised that because I wanted my Twitter followers to say that I want Maria to know what kanal means and how it's affecting the discourse now on Twitter. But here's my question. I'm a trustee of Metro Manila Pride, and we organize the Pride March every year in Manila. So it's very, my concern is always on the LGBTQ plus issues. It's in the news again with Pope's recent comments on civil unions and the recent hearing for the SOGI Equality Bill. So about queer representation in journalism, how can local media improve reporting on LGBTQIA plus news? One that reflects the global progress in respectful language used like the ones GLAD champions in the United
I can
States.
tell you that on Rappler, our folks actually educate the older folks like me. It's like, truly, it's our people are the ones. I think part of it is, this generation is very different. Your generation and younger are very different from the way I grew up when I first came back to the Philippines. Such a different time. So how do we make it better? Again, I'm sorry I keep going back to the technology that is impacting every part of our lives. The reality is that the marginalized become even more marginalized in this environment, in the platforms that we're using, because hate speech, conspiracy theories, disinformation spread fastest, right? And when a target of hate is demonized, it spreads virally. Now, having said that, here in the Philippines, I will tell you that we map the Twitter landscape. We look at what's happening on Facebook. The LGBTQ community is incredible, just incredible in terms of how it works together, how it fights for its rights. I can tell you every time Rappler, when I get arrested, when something bad happens to Rappler, the LGBTQ community is always there. And that, I always have to say thank you for your support. How do we make our society more inclusive? Especially when our leader, I'm sure you guys just saw the video from last night's sex jokes in meeting, right? And this is against women. It's the sexism that at best it's sexism, at worst it's misogyny. Does it turn on? I guess, look, that's a long-winded way of saying the battle will get harder. You have to continue fighting for, as you reclaim identity, you have to make sure that it's acknowledged by our society. It's a right. It's a human right. And so what can you do? Do more. I don't know how much more. I know you do a lot. I know that I'm actually sometimes mesmerized by the way our LGBTQ community, the outspokenness and the ability to present. This was something that wasn't there just 20 years ago, So in that sense, I guess it's the best and the worst of times, right? It's not a concrete answer for you, except to say that you will certainly see a lot of the stories, especially on Soji Bill, on all of the things that are happening. It's part of Rappler's news agenda. But beyond that, I think that it's tough when we're regressing in values of inclusivity, right? So we have to hold the line. So that's also your work. It's not a very satisfying answer, is it? Because I guess
right.
I'm trying very hard. How do you keep the victories that we've had in the past at this time period? It's hard. And in that sense, I guess you have we're there. It's an important. The Soji Bill is important.
That's very true. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Jules, who's next?
Right. Okay. So after Thysz, of course, our last asker is from one of our hosts from the main agenda. Let's welcome Germaine De Ruña.
Hi, Germaine.
Please unmute, Ate Maine.
Sorry, apologies for being late. I just got back from another hosting. I just hosted a fundraising event for the victims of the typhoon. So, papakilala po ako. Ako po ulit si Germaine De Ruña. Isa po akong development worker. Specifically po, ako po, ang puso ko ay nasa rural development sa mga magsaka, katutubo at mga mangingisda. So, nakakatuwa po makausap namin kayo ngayon, no? Lalo na ngayon po ay ika-14 na anibersaryo ng Hacienda Luisita Massacre. So, ako po, ang bias ko talaga ay sa mga magsasaka at mangingisda. Nais ko pong malaman, no, ang trabaho po kasi ng nasa rural development sector ay napakahirap. Ang mga magsasaka po natin na nagpapakain sa atin, ang mga mangingisda, ang mga katutubong Pilipino o nangangalaga ng ating kagubatan. Pero yung issue at ang struggle nila, doon po kami hirap na maipakalat at ma-mainstream yung mga issue at struggles that they are facing. So ang nais ko pong itanong sa inyo ay paano po kaya matutulungan ng media ang ating mga katutubong Pilipino, magsasaka at mangingisda, na ma-amplify yung kanilang call, na papangalagaan din sila at ma-forward yung kanilang mga karapatan. Yun lang po at maraming salamat po sa pagsama nyo sa amin dito ngayong gabi.
Thank you for the question, and I won't sidestep the question by saying social media, as because many the guys before you have actually asked similar things. So let me say first, of course, make sure the organization that you are doing, which I think is necessary, it becomes even harder now with climate change, with a government that offers a lot of very populist ideas, but in the end doesn't offer systemic solutions. And I think that's part of the challenge for all of us now in every sector. If I were just to tell you, if it was the old world where we're just talking about how to catch the attention of media, then there have been a lot of things that have been done, including marches, including stories of every person. Now it's a little existential, right? Existential in the sense that climate change will take away the livelihood of our people. They will. And you can see this already, both pollution in terms of fishing and in terms of what is happening now with the floods and the typhoons that are coming in. So there's that existential problem that you need to find a solution for. We need to find. And then I think the second part is, how do we make every person's journey matter? Because that's really the challenge that you'll face. The sectors have been there, but even this will change. And how do you get beyond the fact that media isn't the gatekeeper anymore? Because in a glut of information on social media, how do you get farmers who may not be on social media? Actually, they are. How can you organize in that way so that you can use the technology for good instead of just being pummeled or manipulated by it? So I guess those are two things I would say, right? Prepare for worse, because the problems that the big problems that we're dealing with will come back. The people who will be hit the most are the ones who need the most. And then the second thing is there a way, even as I rail against social media has empowered, is there a way to amplify there? But even when you put something together, understand that you will walk into an environment of information chaos.
Okay. Thank you so much, Ms. Maria, for answering Ate Main's question. So that ends actually the series of questions from our end. At this point, Ms. Maria, do you have any questions for us?
A lot. And I would like to ask each one of you, I gave you all the negative parts of what we're facing, diba? So let me ask you, how, Germaine, how do you stay optimistic?
How do I stay optimistic? That's a very, very deep question. No? Actually, I think I stay optimistic specifically on the passion, the advocacy that I have, because it's literally in my blood. I came from a family of farmers. My mother was a farmer. She provided us with everything that we need. Her family, my grandmother, and I'd like to share this story because this is very dear to me. No, when I was really young, my grandmother told me that I shouldn't waste any food on the plate because one, a grain of rice symbolizes a soul in the purgatory that won't go up to heaven. So as a gullible kid, I ate everything. That's why I got fat, no? But besides that, no. So I did what she said. I ate everything on the plate, and it made me value everything, especially food. But when I got older, I was walking around Laguna. I live in Laguna, and I saw farmers drying palay by the roadside. And then, as a young kid who was made to believe that every grain of rice is important, I saw people trampling over the rice. So when I saw that, I was shocked. In my head, where will the souls go? Will they all go to hell? And then in my head, why is the situation? Why isn't there any facility for the farmers for them to dry their rice properly? So it became my mission. It became part of me to the point that I had rice tattooed on my forearm. So that's how I stay optimistic, and also by surrounding myself with positive people in the same, Jules, Eah, Gio, Thysz, Raffy, Kuya Rodne, and being with people who believe in the same things, who will always fight for the people in the periphery. Is that still a political correct term? But yeah, nasa bingit at laylayan. So yun nga, and yeah, I stay optimistic by living out my passion and being with the right people. So yun, that's a very Miss Universe kind of question. Thank you, Miss Maria, for that question. Okay, thank you so much.
It's so basic. It's so basic, diba? All of you guys are working on very specific things. You're very focused on one thing, given the setbacks that we have had. Well, first, have you had any victories? Recent victories?
Well, let me think. In our work, I'm part of this organization before. Well, actually, I'm still am. One of the recent victories, I must say, is the fact that in one of our areas in Batangas, actually 48 of the barangays in Batangas, they don't have any disaster risk reduction management plans. But when we got there, we assisted them in creating their disaster risk reduction management plan. So that's a big win for all of the farmers there and the fisher folks residing there, and also for the LGUs as well, because we want them to view us as allies and not as, as an they view us sometimes as in a very adversarial way. So I think that's a success for us, and
that's why you're optimistic, because you see it. Gio, how do you fight? What's the most effective way of fighting revisionism?
Yeah, when in fact, when my colleagues and I found out when we were watching the news way back in 2016, and then we found out that Duterte won, and then Marcos almost got the post. It became clear to us that the negative form of revisionism is still very strong in the public. So, and I think one realization that we discovered during that time is that the academe is very detached from the public. The papers that we publish, or the academic books that we publish, are all catered for the intellectual elite, those who study in the universities. But the voters are not in the universities. They're outside, or even some educational institutions. I've witnessed in some trainings that we did for some teachers. There's really a misinformation, even among the educators, when it comes to historical facts, especially, for example, about the martial law period, the narrative about Marcos' dictatorship. And what's very optimistic about what's happening recently is, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to share this, but I'm just going to be vague about it. We have partners in the university belt that have tapped at least UP to do a review of all grade school textbooks that carry martial law narratives.
Yeah.
And then make a policy paper about this, present this to the Department of Education, and then probably revise the major textbooks and call the attention of the publishers of these major textbooks. So we engage in these types of projects. It's not an overnight solution. You can't do it overnight. It's a process. But I think with the efforts and with the initiatives that's happening today, it's very optimistic, because at least we have a shot that in the future generations, the likes of Duterte and Marcos won't be elected, because we will probably be educating the children with accurate materials that carry accurate information about critical issues in the past. So we're very optimistic about forward-looking about the discipline and how it's applied in the educational sector. So, yeah.
to the two journalists, Jules and Eah, how would you rate how journalists have performed under pressure?
Jules, go ahead.
Go ahead, Eah.
Okay. How would I rate how the journalist performed under pressure? I'll provide context muna from where I'm coming from. Though I'm part of a news organization before, I mostly work in the newsroom, yes, but I wasn't really on the field. So maybe the pressures that I felt before are not really the same as the pressures that the journalists on the field have been experiencing on a day-to-day basis or engaging with personalities per se directly. But I still feel that the journalists, at least that I've worked with and that I've witnessed or that I've interacted with inside my previous organization or even outside in the field, I know that they're genuinely willing to really stay true to the principles of responsible journalism. We've seen this. I've interfaced with many Rappler journalists. I've had batchmates also from Rappler, young journalists. I've worked with veteran journalists of ABS-CBN. They all of them, they're also really trying to stay true and upholding ethics in journalism, even when there are different factors. Sometimes you will get calls from politicians asking you to take down stories or to revise things, for example. It's possible, it can happen. And I believe that this still go through the proper. We still try to go through the proper the protocols that we've put in place. This is Maria. You've built a solid ethics and protocols manual for news organizations, and up to this day, I've witnessed how organizations really tried to actually did their best to uphold these standards. So yeah, I'm not sure though. I cannot speak for those outside and those that have firsthand experiences. But I'm still proud of the journalists that I've seen. Yeah, and I feel very bad that we cannot go beyond the hurdles of the technology. Kasi parang yun nga, may echo chambers. And even when we publish good stories or truthful journalism, if the people that we need to reach do not have the access to these platforms, even social media or the mainstream media on free TV, for example, if they cannot access the truthful journalism, responsible journalism, we can just guess what kind of information they get and what kind of votes we will see in 2022. So there, I'll stop there. Jules.
Right. Miss Maria, from my end, actually, I'd like to quickly begin with how your messaging of holding the line truly inspired me as a young media practitioner from the state media before. There were several instances when I really wanted to resign already. I mean, Ate Main, Kuya Rodne, Eah, and Thysz and Raffy, and sometimes my brother. I talked to them and asked them, should I be here? Should I stay in the state media, or should I move out and maybe join another media organization? Pero yung nakuha ko nga pong message dun sa hold the line, what if I hold the line within the state network? But yun nga, sometimes you just really need to draw the line. So I up until now, Miss Maria, I really think that the government media has this huge potential to reach down to the masses, because imagine like the PIA, they have 80 plus offices all throughout the Philippines. But despite the promises in 2016 that there will be a promise of transitioning the state media into like a PBS, like a public broadcasting system, a true media for the people. Obviously, 4 years down, it's still not happening. I think it won't really happen during this regime. But I'm still hopeful that some of our media friends in the state media are truly aware na minsan propaganda na rin yung sinasabi nila, pero they're just doing that to protect their careers. So Miss Maria, before you proceed to my other colleagues here, if there's one message that you'd like to say to those media practitioners in the state media, what would that be? Binalik ko yung tanong.
No, you know that I started in PTV, right? When I first came to the Philippines in 1986, I walked in. Twink Makaraig was my classmate in third grade, and so I walked in and I started in PTV4. Look, I know the potential power of state media. And the challenge then was it was reeling from the Sendanya days and was trying. I could see the people in the network trying to get rid of self-censorship, trying. And then it was the youth that was coming up, right? Now, I mean, gosh, you would know better, but you've always been outspoken, and that's great that it's an individual battle for integrity all the time. And it's tough to know whether you are going to stay and work for change from within or blast from outside, right? Oftentimes when you're blasting, you don't get as much say. You can't steer the ship. It's the same thing. There's a lot of money that is going to state media now. And there's a lot of potential that can also just be wasted. So it goes back. It's an individual battle for integrity. The potential has always been there. I'll toss a question to Rodne. I think, we 20 typhoons every year. What we just saw happen, a lot of the processes that were put in place since Ondoy, since Yolanda, a lot of these workflow processes have been thrown out because it's so personality centric. What do you see moving forward? How are we going to deal with these? How are we going to deal with this? Nakamute there. Oh.
Actually, there's a 10-second delay, I think, or right.
Maria, it's a matter of communication. Filipinos practically, they already know through experience. They already know through their traditional knowledge. Yes. The Filipinos already know through experience. Tagalogin ko na lang
Sige.
Hindi aksyon ng Pilipino hanggat hindi nila nararanasan yung mga sakit at kahirapan. I think we need to change it because we need to accept the science. We need to accept yung naranasan natin na nahirapan tayo. The lesson. Filipinos experience, but the lesson learned, ito yung pinakamahirap. Dahil naandyan yung karakter natin ng kapit sa patalim na okay lang, raranasan natin yan, ngingiti na lang tayo. I think there's a need to have that conversion of experience to learning from experience. Ganyan yan hindi dapat tayo na okay lang yan, pero kailangan nating matuto doon sa naranasan natin at hindi natin dapat gawin yung naranasan natin bilang isang kabayaran doon utang na loob natin sa mga nagbigay ng mga kagandahang loob sa ating buhay. We need to stop toying or taking advantage of that kind of resiliency na tinatawag dahil ang capacity natin, our capacities are actually being reduced by our patronage doon sa mga politicians, yung powers that be na sinasabi lagi na tutulungan namin kayo. We need to be independent from that. But at the end of the day, localization ay napaka-importante. We need to learn from the indigenous peoples, but at the same time, the communication of science, technically, hindi natin maiintindihan at maunawan. Ngunit alam ng mga Pilipino, the experiences, but the learning from experiences, that's the biggest problem. We need to address that, learning from experiences.
No, thank you. Thysz, and Raffy, right? This one is
Hello.
This is a question on identity and I guess how you're so vocal. How has it changed? Politics has changed in incredible ways, in ways we never thought would really be possible, or I didn't. So in your battle now, how has it changed? Has it changed for better, for worse? Where do you see it going?
Do I answer, partner, first? Okay, I'll go ahead. So thank you so much for the wonderful question. I have only 10 seconds. Miss Universe? So has it changed? Absolutely, yes. The weird thing is, if you're outspoken now, immediately you're somebody who is tagged in the narrative of just two opposing figures, pro and against the government. And sometimes if you push yourself to be only that and assume that kind of a box that you are put in, it limits you. It limits you so much. And but that's the beauty of being part of the queer community. We've always resisted boxes. We've always, broken out of that light, broke that light into rainbow, basically. So, and that's one powerful, aspect of being queer and being outspoken. It's still, the state is still, an oppressor, definitely, in terms of human rights. And LGBT rights are human rights. And that's what we're fighting for. In a country, in this kind of atmosphere where human rights is already a bad word. They've made it into something like something bad. To call for LGBT rights equivalent to human rights is immediately bad. So, ang hirap mag-start ng discussion sa mga taong na box na into pro and anti. I hope that it will change because of the mere fact that, again, the LGBT has always resisted boxing itself in. And I guess the hope there is, let us be part of that voice to call for accountability and, being this government really serving its people. The LGBT voice is important. We bring a lot of, I guess, other than the sense of humanness, because, we are so attuned into what makes us truly human, humor. And, keeping this fight, finding the light moments there, carrying the message while we're still laughing, is one important thing to make sure na hindi tayo mapagod lahat. So I guess that's my answer.
That's great.
Thank you.
Nakakatakot naman. Same question ba, Maria?
Raffy, I can ask you more political. You're fighting on so many battles. What keeps you going on? What's your North Star?
Ang drama, pero may parents. Pero yung North Star is not because parang it's an ideal star for me. Parang for me yung North Star guide lang siya for me. We are very open about this in our family. But pare-pareho kami. I follow the footsteps of my dad and my mom. Both of them worked so hard in government. Pero yung dad ko specifically on the other side of the fence. So parang we are not friends politically. And pinanghawakan ko yun hanggang ngayon. Kasi ayokong malipat dun sa kabilang parte ng fence na yun, because I know how dark, I know how difficult, and I know how corrupt yung ganong klaseng mundo. And because I saw that, I experienced that when I was a child, ayoko yung gawin. So I decided na itapon yun pataas at yun ang gawin kong North Star. Because if I let myself go to that side, parang wala ng saysay. And ano yun parang contrasting yun ng mga bagay na ginagawa ng parents ko. My mom naman, on the other hand, decided to stay in our community, a very poor community in Camarines Sur, despite being diagnosed with cancer, etc., and despite being given the opportunity to migrate to another country, decided to stay. Because palagi nang sagot sa akin, sinong gagawa ng trabaho ko? Wala pa kaming nahahanap na ibang tao, wala pa kaming na-train, etc. So, while it's contrasting for me, palagi siyang nagiging guide. And that's how I also decide on how I'll align myself politically. Madaling makita ang mali sa politika
Yeah.
Hindi ang politics hindi siya colorful. I mean, it's colorful, maraming drama, maraming nangyayari. Pero very clear ang mali at tama sa politika.
Yeah.
And when you decide to align yourself with the right people, all in yun.
Yeah.
Kasi kapag hinayaan mo yung sarili mo na magtira ng kahit konti, there are so many opportunities para yung dilim ay pumasok din sa'yo. So yun yung wag nating hahayaan siguro. When I decided to embrace yung pagiging very political, it brought so many troubles na sa akin, pagiging outspoken, pagpo-post ng kung ano-ano mga bagay, ang dami-dami ng problemang dinala niyan sa akin. Pero wala I decided to join this side of the fence. I have to make sure that the grass is green here, diba? And that people will be lured to join our group, to join this side of the fence. Ang dami nang nangyaring pagbabago, ang dami nang nangyaring bago sa napakaraming bagay sa politika, sa iba't ibang industriya sa Pilipinas. Pero lahat ng pagbabago na yun, binago rin ako bilang isang tao at bilang isang politiko. So when I decided to be one of Maria's babies, as one of Rappler ambassadors, yung pagiging ko many years ago, I think almost a decade ago.
Yes.
Yeah. Kaya hanggang ngayon nasa Rappler ako because I know tama yung ginagawa diba? It's so easy to let go of Rappler, diba? Noong nahihirapan sila. But because I decided to stay and because Rappler forced, and tried it best, despite nag-aaway minsan si Maria pag mga hindi ko nagugustuhan na nangyayari, I message her. I DM her. Minsan sobrang late na ng gabi. Pero that's how accountability works. And that's why I decided to stay. I decided to fight with Rappler. So ganun sa politika. Na sana, at last pala, na sana ay matutunan din ng mga politiko. Kasi yung politics in the Philippines is politics of convenience.
Correct.
You stay with power until the next election so that you can enjoy the power. Despite being tagged as a crazy congressman, a crazy mayor, kasi nagbumukha na silang tanga diba? Passing all these legislations na talagang bobo naman talaga, hindi pinag-isipan, di ba? Pero, because they enjoy the power so much, they're so afraid to let go of that seat, di ba? Compromising their values and principles. Sana matutunan din ng mga politiko natin. At kung may mga kabataan man na gustong pumasok sa politika, find your North Star. Di ba? Find your North Star. Thank you, Maria.
Okay. Thank you so much, Miss Maria. Kung wala na po kayong question, meron po tayong isa pang very quick segment po.
Nakakalok. Ano ba?
Okay, ma'am. Miss Maria, hashtag nasaan ang Pangulo. So, nag-trend to last week. What's your take on this?
I mean, I think we're searching for leadership, you know. I mean, it's a simple thing, right? And part of it is it feels very much like the end of the Marcos days, you know, where it's too many parallels. So that's I think where it's coming from. And aside from that is we truly are we're at a very, very difficult moment where the old problems, like all of the things that we talked about, right? All of these old problems are still there, but then you add COVID on top of it, and then you add COVID not well managed on top of it. I mean, really, how strange. The Philippines and Brazil, two countries where most of the people appointed to manage the pandemic are retired military generals. So we're looking for leadership and a sense of someone at the reins, evidence-based. I'm looking for evidence-based thinking. And it's not personality-driven, but all the people around the president seem to think it will only be the president who speaks. And that's the other reason I keep looking for it. Where are the institutions? Where are our checks and balances? Yes, we see the VP, Raffy. She is out there, you know, but even that is crazy, right? What would it actually, kill the Duterte administration to work with the vice president? Wouldn't that be a great show of unity? You know, these big, wicked problems that we are dealing with right now, you can't do it by dividing your nation. You're going to have to heal.
Yeah.
Right. And kasama rin po dyan sa mga nag-trend na topics ang hashtag Cagayan needs help. And yun nga po, nung Miyerkules ng gabi, hinagupit ng Bagyong Ulysses ang Kalakhang, Luzon. So let me just update everyone. Ilang araw po matapos yung bagyong iyon, nagulat na lang po tayo sa dami ng mga nag-trend na pictures, images ng baha sa Cagayan at Isabela. Kasunod po niyan, tumaas din ang pangamba sa Pampanga at the rest of Region 2 and Region 3. And dahil po dyan, katugtong po niya ng ating ambag segment for tonight, Jules.
This is very quick, Miss Maria. Eah, go ahead.
Yes. Yun po, every night dito sa Quarantalk, we give a way for others to also help and participate in responding to this pandemic. Ngayon po, sa Bagyo po muna tayo, isa sa mga donation drive na pwede niyong padalhan ng tulong ay ang Bayanihan para sa Pinas fundraising initiative ng 2030 Youth Parks in the Philippines. Maaari po kayong mag-donate ng in cash or in kind or pera o bayong. Nasa screen po ang donation channels. For 300 pesos, you can cover one package of essential goods for one family. Maaari din po kayo magpadala ng mga drinking water, etc., supplements. For more information, you can visit the Facebook page of the 2030 Youth Force in the Philippines, splashed on your screen. Ayan. And
Alright.
Please do help. Thank you. Okay, Jules.
Okay, Miss Maria, as we end, before we let you go, of course, paano ba? Less than 2 years before the end of this administration, I assume maraming mga disillusion because of the several issues na nangyari this past 4 years. How can we move forward proactively, and how can we use the remaining years or months before the elections para ma-maximize natin lahat to have a better results in 2022?
Oh my gosh. So I have two things. First is that, the first question I threw at you before we even went live was, where do you find hope? So I think that I find hope right here. Our conversation gave me hope that you are so passionate about what you believe in, that you are working hard for it, that you have hope. In terms of where we're headed, look, the platforms that we are on encourage and grow hate, right? These things divide and tear apart. This is the problem with the politics that does us against them, which is actually part of the strength of President Duterte, right? That's the way he creates a them. Well, it doesn't work when you're building something. So what to look forward to? I think 3 pillars of Rappler is tech, community, and journalism, right? So I think the first is I hope that we can control the lies and the manipulation on social media. I look forward to global responses to this. This is not in the Philippines, but it will impact us as the platforms have already impacted us. I think journalism, more journalists get prepared, because it will get worse before it gets better. And that will lend to the communities you guys are building. Quarantalk, you're building your own community with your values, with your strength, with your hope. That really is the energy that we need to 2022. Because without that, then you cannot build. It's a time to build. Despite all of the hate that is pumped at you, you throw it away and you find that hope, that energy that allows building the future. That's what we need.
Okay. All right. So thank you so much, Miss Maria Ressa. Guys, meron pa ba kayong gusto sabihin kay Miss Maria before we let her go?
Jules, isingit ko lang, okay lang. Like, lagi ko sasabi kay Jules, actually ginamit niya ito when he delivered the talk before. Like you mentioned, you kept on mentioning, Maria, passion, no? I think what you're doing is really yung passion mo, you embody it. And how do you spell passion? Di ba you spell it Passion? But we should spell passion differently. Kailangan maglagay tayo ng letrang T sa gitna ng I at ng O. So how do you spell it now? You pass it on.
Nice!
Yun. So, thank you. Ang ganda, diba? Kung Miss Universe, thank you. Oh my God. Thank you, Miss Maria.
Maria, thank you so much. Siguro hindi na ako nakapagpasalamat sa iyo ng napakaraming pagkakataon na nagkatrabaho tayo. But thank you so much for indulging me and for responding to my angry comments, no? Every time I feel na hindi naging tama yung reporting, hindi naging tama yung tweets or whatsoever. Because doon na build yung pagtitiwala ko sa iyo. As one of my idols, one of my friends, 'di ba? Na nagtiwala din sa napakabatang Raffy before. So thank you so much.
Funny. You have always been smart and you always will be. This is the reason thank you. You know,
Thank you, Maria.
It does. And I hope, you continue.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you, Maria.
My thanks goes out to Maria for basically still employing my friends in Rappler. Maria, if you don't know, a lot of your babies in Rappler, I drink with them when they, have to unload and, hang out with them. Make sure they have a life outside of how crazy the cycle is. Yeah. And they've been among the people I call the closest of my friends, and believe that whatever you teach them, whatever values that Rappler, they learn from Rappler, gets passed in those little talks that we have with a circle of friends that we have. So thank you so much. They're multiplied through you.
Miss Maria, ipapasada na rin natin to lahat. Gio, ikaw bilang isang educator, lagi mong sinasite ng Rappler. Magpasalamat ka na sa Rappler.
Thank you. Thank you, Miss Maria, for having us tonight. And gaya ng sabi ni Jules, lagi kong sinasite sa mga presentations ko yung Rappler kasi I can cite academic books, but they're in the libraries of universities, hindi accessible sa lahat ng tao. And I'm really impressed with, and not only me, with the academy is really looking at Rappler, because Rappler frequently publishes contributors from the academe, and these are really credible studies that are packaged for the general public. And we need more online articles like these that Rappler is frequently publishing to have the public informed about critical issues in the society. That's why it's very safe for me that, kasi in the academy we have this na be careful about internet sources. But when we cite Rappler, may bibliography sila sa ilalim. So talagang we need the partnership of big media outlets to disseminate academic information, not really on the the academy has to go down the so-called ivory tower, and this is one of the venues, like Rappler is one of the venues where the academics they get to publish their views and influence people.
No, thank you, Gio.
So thank you very much.
Magko-contribute na raw siya, ma'am, sa Rappler. Mga history articles. Ate Main, may gusto ka pa sabihin?
Okay na yung passion.
Okay.
Thank you, for inspiring us. At sana nga we can pass it on, sa ating mga advocacy.
Kuya Rodne, from Sibuyan Islands, go ahead.
Maria, thank you so much for publishing and actually sharing the truth about the climate crisis, about climate change. And we admire really Rappler. We've been partners when I was still with the Climate Reality Project and still with Living Laudato Si Philippines. We have John Leo Algo, of course, contributing a lot more on climate environment. We hope that many actually emulate you in highlighting climate change. Thank you so much for telling the truth. The truth will always save us.
Thank you, Kuya Rodne. Eah?
No, your courage is inspiring. No joke. As in, for genuinely, even for journalists like us, or at least the media creators, content creators, we are creating platforms, but we also look up to those who have started this, who have gone beyond us, and have really pushed things forward for us. Also, thank you for creating Rappler and Move PH. It's one of the most active, efficient, and really, it opens the platform for more young voices to be heard and to participate. Yung civic engagement, laging sobrang strong sa Move PH ng Rappler. And with that po, thank you for telling your stories, for sharing your time, and for being very vocal about these things. Kasi if you ask, diba, parang paano kami naging optimistic? Ako, because I know that it can be done, because other people like you, yung mga veteran journalists natin, they have succeeded different battles already, and you have inspired other people as well in the along the way. And we know that we can do that too if we continue to be vocal and stay true to our passion. Ayan, iba po yung fields natin, but we always do our best to persevere. Salamat. Jules, ikaw din. Ano yung sabi mo?
Ma'am, welcome pala sa retreat natin.
Jules, pa-birthday pala din ni Maria. Parang birthday salubong, parang ganon.
Oo nga eh. Diba? Well, Miss Maria, siguro minsan parang I personally feel bad na internationally, sobrang ganda ng reception sa lahat ng ginagawa mo. I mean, you all have the awards from the different organizations. Pero right here in our homeland mismo, 'di ba, samot-sari yung mga nambabatikos sa'yo, ang daming mong kasong kinakaharap. Kanina sabi mo nasa korte ka na naman. Pero patuloy kang lumalaban. Ang dami nating mga mamamahayag ang tumatahimik na lang kasi siguro for practical reasons para protektahan yung mga trabaho nila. Pero naniniwala pa rin ako doon sa sa paniniwala nila na alam nila kung ano talaga yung katotohanan. So maraming salamat Miss Maria for being a symbol of courage for press freedom here in the Philippines. At kami dito sa Quarantalk Media, kahit nakakasimula pa lang po namin, hindi rin po namin alam kung paano pa ito masusustain. Masaya lang po kami, pero kaisa nyo po kami para sa pag-hold ng line, ng hold the line. At kaisa nyo rin po kami para protektahan ang press freedom, lalo na sa mga panahon na to. So on behalf of Quarantalk Media, Ms. Maria Ressa, maraming salamat po.
Thank you. Maraming salamat din. Thank you.
Okay po. Alright, thank you Miss Maria. Good night po.
Good night.
Thank you so much.
Thank you po. Maraming salamat.
Okay. Shall we end?
Unless gusto mong tuloy-tuloy hanggang madaling araw, Jules.
You're our producer, Jules. You're our
Ako
boss.
nga, ikaw producer.
Kasi Maria sa show namin, 2 hours.
Okay.
Yeah,
Miss
hanggang
Maria, if you...
sila minsan.
Sorry, Miss Maria, kung gusto niyo po ng inuman session with Thysz and Raffy, Thursday po. Hanggang madaling araw po yan. Thank you again. Jules, CB po. Rose, CB.
Thank you po.
Thank you
CBB
so
ka
much.
po.